Okay then, so good morning everyone. Today is Thursday, October 8th, 2020. Welcome to our two special meetings, if you will. The very first one deals with, in general, the subject of buildings and grounds, but specifically the Romer building, also known to some as the Hawkins House. The time is now, I have 8:34 a.m. This first meeting will be strictly limited to 30 minutes. It's probably going to be a little bit less. And so attending are Commissioners Duncan, Brooks, and Filios, officially calling this meeting to order. Do we have any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, our one and only business and potential action item is to consider approval of the sale of the Romer Building, 627 North Government Way. And so what I'm going to do at this point, I'm not really going to open it up for general discussion, but not yet. Okay, but I'm going to make a few points, but what I want to do is I want to bring everybody up to speed because there have been some questions of late regarding the potential transaction. So that's what I'm going to do first so that anyone concerned, we're all on the same page. Okay. So what we did a few weeks ago, we decided that we were going to put the property up for bid. We established a minimum bid of $500,000. There was an initial bid. It didn't meet the parameters. And so what happened, that bid was rejected. We do have another bid on the table for just slightly over the $500,000 by $1, but clearly that meets the requirements. We purchased the property 3 years ago for $420,000. And we had taken or looked at several options. One was to actually sell the structure. We had no takers. The other was to potentially have somebody relocate the structure. Too big, too difficult, too cumbersome, and presumably too expensive. So that didn't work. In the course of the last 3 years, no one has approached us to purchase the property. We were considering demolishing the property so that we could use it either as a parking lot or to build on it. Of course, there was a firestorm of protests, as you can imagine, from the residents. And right around the same time emerged a desire for some to not only save the building, which we essentially have some level of obligation to do from a historical preservation perspective. But what happened is they decided they wanted to create a music conservatory. There's one, incidentally, up in Sandpoint that's very successful with, I understand, approximately 400 members. And so what we did is we decided as a board unanimously that we would offer it up for bid, and we established deed restrictions. Now, this is very important. Those deed restrictions, and I'm not going to read them all, said specifically that the building had to be used as either a music conservatory or nonprofit, and had to be limited to no more than 2 stories. And the reason we did that is we really wanted to favor the nonprofit use of the building, and more specifically the music conservatory, because these are the folks that came forth, that put forth the effort and said, we're interested. One of the reasons we decided not to occupy the building is, number one, it isn't big enough. And number two, the condition of the building, because it is going to require some level of renovation and repair. And so we basically discarded that idea. Now, some people feel we ought to hold on to it or demolish the structure and build. And of course, we could do that, but then that's going to potentially create another problem with the neighborhood because it would be a commercial structure of, I suspect, at least 2 stories, maybe as many as 4 or 5. You've also probably heard talk of why are you letting it go or potentially letting it go at just over $500,000 when it's worth $800,000. I'm a realtor. I'm also a residential appraiser. You're not going to get $800,000 with those restrictive covenants. We would literally have to open it up, consistent with the zoning, which is commercial 17 units. A developer would come in, you'd get a multi-story structure, and we might get $700,000 or $800,000 for it. But given the deed restrictions that are built in, no one's going to pay $800,000 for the structure. Those deed restrictions were decided unanimously by this board, and so that's where we are today. So I think that might answer some of the questions. I had a couple of people call yesterday, and so that's the history, that's what's occurred, and we're in a situation right now where we're looking at building a several-story building right here on the campus. We've already solicited requests for qualification from several architectural firms, and so obviously that's going to be an expense that's going to be confronting us. So before I go any further and before we take up the specific issue or question of the bid, I would like to ask Mayor Steve Widmeyer to come forth because the bid before us is an LLC formed by Mayor Widmeyer and Pepper Smock of Windermere. And clearly they're going to have to abide by the restrictive covenants, which will prevent any development for at least 10 years. Mayor Widmeyer?
I have a question.
Sure.
To our attorney. Is a bid and an offer the same thing?
Well, actually, it's probably better to characterize this as an offer because it did not come in a timely manner during the bid process.
Thank you.
But I do think, an offer is a good word for it.
You okay? Mayor Widmeyer, please.
Commissioners, for this opportunity. It's interesting to be on this side of the dais for a change. Yeah, and I'll be brief here, but there's several names for the house. There's the Hamilton House after the mayor in the early 1900s. There's the Romer House after the attorneys that were there for so many years. I refer to it as the Hawkins House because the Hawkins family lived there, and that's who I delivered newspapers to in the early 70s. So there's quite a few different names to the house. It was always my intentions to support the preservation of the house from the very beginning. It was never my intention to do it at this level. I was always very supportive of hopefully someone coming forward and doing it. When some things fell apart at the last minute, there were some folks that reached out to me. I then in turn reached out to Pepper Smock, and Pepper has a long history in Coeur d'Alene as well, and he wants to preserve history. And we felt that we just needed to step forward. I got in touch with Commissioner Filios. He had sent me the deed restrictions of it. We're okay with all of the deed restrictions. The only caveat that I may add is that there's a line in the very bottom of it, and it says that it talks about breach, that if there's any breach of the restrictions. And I would just, and I've never breached anything in my life, and I don't think the Pepper Smock is either, and I can assure you 99.99% there never will be a breach. But if there could just be some language that would say owner shall have X amount of days to cure any breach. That would be the only caveat that I would want. It could be an unintended breach. Say, for example, you form an LLC, you forget to renew every year. You're supposed to renew it. You're supposed to send something into the state and renew it. Say, for example, you forgot to do that. The LLC then became null and void. There's language in there that says if your LLC becomes null and void, that's a breach and the county can take the property back. And that would be an unintended breach. So that's the only addition that I would see, if that would be acceptable to the commissioners, just to have some time, whether it be 90 days or 120 days or whatever you deem appropriate, to be able to cure that breach. We have reached out to the Music Conservatory. Our hope is that we have a long, long relationship with the Music Conservatory. We have an understanding of what they would lease it for. A lease amount is something that they could afford. The lease amount is certainly not market, but it is something that we feel can get them going. It's going to be an important addition to our community, and we really feel good on two aspects. Number one, preserving that building, and then number two, getting a relationship with the Music Conservatory. So we're very excited to do that and hopeful that we can move forward on that.
Any questions for Mayor Widmeyer?
I do. You say long-standing, so are you intending the home to stand permanently?
Yes.
Okay. And is there a mechanism for the conservatory to purchase the home from you?
Yes, we have that outlined. All of those details aren't put in place, but we have mentioned in our letter of intent that would be something that if they can pull it off in the future and purchase it, that would be great.
Okay. And then if for some reason the conservatory does not come to fruition, what would your intent be with the property?
It would be to seek, according to the deed restrictions, it would be to seek a nonprofit. Okay. That's the restrictions. We would abide by those restrictions.
Bill, question?
Yeah, very practical. Have you been in there from top to bottom?
Yes.
Been in the basement?
Yep.
Did you get the property condition report?
I've not seen the property condition report, but I know that the Music Conservatory has gone through it.
How
up
about your
and down.
partner? Has he seen the property condition report?
He is not, but we're good with it.
We're gonna buy it anyway.
Yeah, well, it says as is, and as is, right?
Leslie, any more?
I just had prepared a statement.
Sure, go right ahead.
And so some of it's going to be irrelevant because Mayor has answered my questions, but I will go ahead and read it anyway.
Chris, no other questions?
I'm sorry?
No other questions?
No, I just want to make note of counsel, that's Pat Braden, this is our Deputy Prosecuting Attorney. Pat, you seem to be nodding with the provision that Mayor Widmeyer requested, the time to cure. Makes sense to you?
Yes, it does. It actually makes a lot of sense to me,
Okay.
although I would probably advocate for a shorter period, like 30 to 60 days, or such longer time as the parties can agree.
Fair enough. Leslie, you're okay?
60 days and then,
You're fine.
communication.
Bill, you're okay? Okay. Thank you, Mayor Widmeyer, appreciate it. Go ahead, Leslie.
As I've stated publicly, my priorities are to the taxpayer. I believe the acquisition of the Romer Hamilton property was strategic for county operations. I've never wanted to sell the property, but became caught up in the desires of neighbors and the Coeur d'Alene Music Conservatory to save the house. My initial thought was to lease the property to extend the life of the house and to keep it under county's ownership for the long-term future, but that would require a unanimous vote of the Board of Commissioners, which is unobtainable. Offering the property for sale seemed to be the next logical option, except for one problem. I don't want to sell the property. Again, it's not that I don't hear the cries of the neighbors who want to save the home. I have an obligation to house county operations for the benefit of taxpayers first and foremost. Now the BOCC is faced with an offer, not from the Music Conservatory, but developers whom the Music Conservatory believe facilitate the preservation of the house in perpetuity. And Mayor Widmeyer spoke to this, so I'm more comfortable now that this will remain the case forever. I feel like I've let the taxpayers of Kootenai County, done the taxpayers of Kootenai County a disservice by entertaining the sale of the Romer property, especially below market value. At the very least, I'd like to take a step back and fully understand the long-term ramifications of selling this strategic property. It is the obligation of the BOCC when selling any county-owned property to ensure the sale meets the needs of the organization and the taxpayer. Saying that, I understand that the mayor's desire to retain the home. And I guess I would ask one more thing. If the LLC should decide that they no longer were interested in the property, then I would ask that the county be given first right of refusal.
Mayor Widmeyer? I see him nodding. You okay with it, Bill?
No.
Leslie, your thinking, your reasoning?
For first right of refusal?
Yeah.
It's the strategic part. Just like we want to protect the airport, we want to get property around the airport so the operation can maintain the same. That's just how I feel about this property here.
I have a statement also.
Go right ahead.
As long as they're making statements.
Go right ahead.
I don't think that building should have ever been bought by the county. Makes no sense whatsoever. It didn't when it was bought. It's not being used for what it was intended to be bought for, and there's a very good reason for that. This house should have been left on the open market, and it would have long ago been gone, and hopefully been, maybe the Music Conservatory or some other nonprofit group would have bought it, I don't know. But by having the county own it, then we get involved in what's the county's role? Are we supposed to own property? Should we be leasing property? Should we be remediating private property? And I don't believe the county should be doing any of those things. And that's specifically in the interest of the taxpayer. We are not real estate speculators or investors, and we shouldn't be.
Okay. That it? I just want to add a couple more points, and I'll be very brief. people have wondered, did we advertise the property? Was this promoted correctly? And the answer is absolutely. There have been several news articles, including the notice to sell. The notice of bid was in the paper, providing the required by statute 10-day notice, posted also on the county website and on Facebook. So I'll leave it at that. There are a couple of people who want to speak. Absolute limit, 3 minutes. Larry, you've got the floor.
Well, 3 minutes is short, but I'll be quick. Thank you for that. First of all, I'd like to thank Bill Brooks because I agree also the county shouldn't have become involved. I'd like to point out that the deed restrictions are not exactly as they've been represented in this meeting today. There is a way that very easily this property can be developed into a multi-story building within a couple of years. First of all, and I'd like to address Commissioner Duncan's question about or concern about the first right of refusal. First right of refusal doesn't do you much good if the offering price is $900,000. There's not an offer to buy it back at the same price. I believe personally that the public is going to look at this as the poison pill that was designed. The deed restrictions were designed to appeal to almost nobody and were essentially designed to hold the market price down. Now here's how this could be very easily, and I'm willing to wager, I can do this legally I'm told, $100 to anybody that's not behind that desk or a party to this transaction, but anybody else in the room, that within 5 years, this property is stripped of these deed restrictions. Here's how it happens. The property is entered into an agreement or sold to LCDC/Ignite CDA. It's then sold back to the developer. That washes all the deed restrictions. Now, there is a property that is in the urban renewal district and is eligible for whatever the city says it's eligible for. I've got a serious concern about that because what it looks like is we're going to put several $100,000s in some developers' pockets real quickly. And I'd like to ask the board in closing, because I'm probably approaching my 3 minutes.
Go ahead.
I'd like to ask the board to table this and start examining this from a standpoint not of, hey, we've got a sale, but rather, what could possibly go wrong here? And certainly, the Music Conservatory isn't in a huge hurry, so the board's got some time to see a more solid plan put forward, and perhaps with deed restrictions that last with the land forever, rather than until it's sold to an urban renewal district and then resold to a developer.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Appreciate the comment. Debbie Mitchell, you wanted to speak?
I'll just quickly respond to what Larry just said, and that is that the mayor is fully cooperating and has been interested in seeing that house nominated for the National Historic Registry. As I said before, it has pre-qualified. It will be done. Once it is on the National Registry, yes, it can be torn down, but the public outrage would be phenomenal. So I have every confidence that that house is going to remain standing. The other thing I was going to mention is on your restrictions, the deed restrictions, maybe you consider an act of God on the last item that the mayor had mentioned about the 60 days.
And so
We
our
have a
council's taking note
windstorm
of that, okay. Thank you, Debbie.
If you got $100, Mr. Spencer would like a bet on that.
Okay, so before I'm going to ask Mayor Widmeyer, would you like to come up one more time? Would you care to respond or rebut?
You know, I don't want to get in any back and forth debate. It was mentioned one time that no good deed is left unpunished. And so when you have roots as deep as Pepper and I do in this community, sure, we've developed property. That's what I've done for my career is bought and developed property. That's how I raised my family. That's how I put my kids through college. I did that. I'm not doing it on this project. We're doing this because we want to save a piece of property, and it's with all good intentions. Now, I really don't know what else to say. We put together which we feel is a good deal with the Music Conservatory. I will be glad to take Larry's $100. And is it 5 years, Larry, that I get the $100? I've got the $100. Maybe we could put it in trust somewhere. So if I put $100, I'll get in 5 years. That's a pretty good return on my money to get that extra $100. So we have pure intentions. We want to see that building there. There isn't going to, it isn't going to be sold to an urban renewal. It isn't going to be sold to another developer. It isn't going to be a high-rise building. We hope that it is the music conservatory for a long, long time.
Thank you. Steve, just one other question. Are you okay with Commissioner Duncan's suggestion that we would have first right of refusal?
However you want to structure that.
Appreciate it. And what's the name of your LLC?
It's just 627 Government Way LLC, just the address of the
Okay.
property.
All right. Thank you. I should also point out, just following up on Mayor Widmeyer's points, we did have another individual that had surfaced after the bid was rejected, if you will, last week. And that individual did tour the building, and she decided that she wasn't interested in going forward with it. But what was interesting is when Mayor Widmeyer called me, I indicated that there was another interested party, and his point to me was, look, if she's interested, that's fine, let her buy it for the conservatory, but if not, we'll step in. And it turned out that, I don't know the specific circumstances, but the individual decided to withdraw. So I believe that Mayor Widmeyer and Pepper Smock's intentions are pure, they're sincere, and these are two gentlemen who are committed to this community, and so I have no issue with it. Anything further? And I'm fine with the first right of refusal, because if it's too expensive, it's too expensive, but at least we reserve the right. Do we have a motion?
I'd move that we accept the offer to purchase the Romer building from Mr. Whitmire and Mr. Pepper.
For the price of
Smock.
$500,001. Pat, can we wrap this up within 10 days?
I can make my best efforts to do so.
And there's some question, there's some materials in the garage and other places on the property.
So 10 days is probably not going to give us enough time.
Well,
And that's fine if it
we
goes
can,
longer.
you can do it, and then you can have that, but this quote, personal property's got to be removed within X number of days.
Right. And I think, in the offer, there was a title company mentioned, and I think.
North Idaho Title.
Yeah, I think that would probably be the best way to go as far as.
What time frame are you comfortable with?
I'd say within 21 days.
Fair enough. Okay.
That's fine.
Are you okay to amend the motion
Sure,
that we'll close within 21 days?
Amended.
Okay. So I'll just restate it. The motion is on the table to sell 627 North Government Way to an LLC known as 627 Government Way, co-owned by Pepper Smock and Mayor Widmeyer for the price of $500,001, closing to occur within 21 days. All covenants and restrictions apply.
And to use the buyer's choice of title company.
Yes, which incidentally was indicated as North Idaho Title.
And I think just to be legal, I think the predicate to that would be a finding that the county has been unable to sell this property at public auction, which I think Commissioner Felios in his opening provided more than ample justification of that finding.
So do you want that added to the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, add that to the motion too.
Okay.
Okay, so the motion will be amended to include that there is a finding that the county was unsuccessful in soliciting an acceptable bid when placed for auction.
And just the legal basis for that, for the record, is Section 31808 Idaho Code subsection 6.
Can we leave it at that with your comment?
Yeah, it doesn't need to be added to the motion. I just wanted to state that for the record.
And for the benefit of everyone in the room, the reason that council is mentioning that particular subsection of the Idaho Code, that's the section of code that says if there's an unsuccessful bid, that we can proceed to transact the property without going through another formal bid process. Is that correct, Pat?
That is correct.
Okay. Is there a second? I will second.
Aye.
Nay, based on I just wanted more time.
And before I say aye, I would like to say that more time? We've been at this for a year.
No, we have not been at the sale for a year. We've been at the sale for a month.
Let's
But
not
we- but we-
argue.
Okay, we won't argue, but fair enough. We have a difference of opinion. So I vote yes. And the motion is passed. The property at 627 North Government Way is hereby ordered sold, closing within 21 days. 2627 North Government Way, LLC. Thank you, everyone. The time is now 8:57. This meeting's adjourned.